The quickest judgment often becomes the longest lesson. Monday morning sunlight reflected from the glass entrance of the Metropolitan Police Headquarters, illuminating the polished stone plaza where officers, detectives, civilian employees, and city officials arrived for another busy day of public service. Patrol vehicles entered the secure parking area, officers greeted one another while carrying briefing folders, and reporters waited behind designated barriers hoping to capture comments about the department's newest leadership announcement. Inside the headquarters, a conference room had already been prepared for an important ceremony that would introduce a new chief to the entire department. Outside, however, no one realized that the person everyone was waiting to welcome had already arrived. Officer Jason Walker stood near the main entrance wearing a freshly pressed Navy police uniform, his polished silver badge reflecting the bright morning light. Years of experience had convinced him that instinct usually reached the correct conclusion before conversation had the opportunity to reveal every fact. That confidence had slowly become habit, and habit had quietly become certainty. As employees continued walking toward the entrance, his attention settled on a black woman approaching the building alone. She wore a tailored charcoal business suit, a crisp white blouse, polished black heels, and carried a simple leather briefcase. There was nothing extravagant about her appearance. No official vehicle waited nearby. No escort walked beside her. No assistant hurried ahead to announce her arrival. She paused briefly to hold the entrance door open for an elderly visitor before continuing toward the security checkpoint with calm confidence. Her name was Angela Brooks, although no one standing outside appeared to recognize her. Jason stepped directly into her path before she reached the front doors. "Ma'am, I need you to stop for a moment," he said firmly. Angela immediately complied and looked toward him with calm brown eyes. "Good morning, officer," she replied politely. "How may I help you?" Her voice remained steady, respectful, and remarkably composed. Jason carefully studied her before answering. "I need to verify why you are attempting to enter headquarters." Angela nodded without hesitation and slowly reached toward the leather briefcase resting beside her. Before she could retrieve anything, Jason raised one hand. "Please leave your bag where it is." Angela immediately lowered her hand. "Certainly," she answered. "If you allow me a moment, I can explain why I am here." Jason interrupted before she finished speaking. "You can explain after I determine whether you belong inside this building." Several nearby officers slowed their pace. A civilian employee quietly stopped near the front steps while two academy recruits exchanged uncertain glances. A television photographer instinctively turned a camera toward the growing conversation. Public moments have a way of gathering silent audiences before anyone understands why. Angela remained remarkably composed. She neither protested nor demanded special treatment. She simply stood where she had been instructed, her expression unchanged despite the growing attention surrounding her. Jason interpreted that calmness as confidence that had not yet been earned. During the tense exchange, he acted in an unnecessarily disrespectful manner, making dismissive assumptions about her and escalating the encounter through his conduct rather than careful observation. Angela met his eyes with quiet sincerity and said, "Officer, every person deserves the opportunity to be heard before a conclusion is reached." Her words carried no anger, no frustration, and no attempt to challenge his authority. Believing he was acting appropriately, Jason informed Angela that she would be detained while her identity and purpose were verified. She complied peacefully with every lawful instruction, offering no resistance and asking for no special consideration. Around them, conversations gradually faded as more people turned toward the unusual scene. Some discreetly lifted their phones. Others simply watched in complete silence. Angela never revealed who she was. She never mentioned the leadership meeting waiting inside headquarters. She only glanced once toward the conference room windows above the entrance with calm patience, as though she understood that truth had never needed to hurry because eventually it always arrived exactly where genuine leadership expected it to be. Angela Brooks remained exactly where Officer Jason Walker had instructed her to stand, her leather briefcase resting quietly beside her while the steady rhythm of the police headquarters continued around them. Patrol officers walked through the front entrance carrying morning briefing folders, detectives crossed the plaza discussing overnight reports, civilian employees checked identification badges before entering the building, and television crews adjusted cameras outside the media area without realizing that the person everyone inside was waiting to welcome was standing only a few yards away. To everyone passing through the entrance, Angela appeared to be another visitor delayed by routine security procedures. She made no effort to change that impression. Instead, she quietly observed the headquarters with the calm familiarity of someone who understood the responsibility carried by every person who served inside those walls. Officer Jason Walker remained convinced that every passing minute confirmed the judgment he had already reached. The more composed Angela appeared, the more certain he became that she was concealing something important. In his experience, people who truly belonged usually identified themselves immediately. Some became impatient. Others demanded supervisors or attempted to justify themselves before questions were complete. Angela did none of those things. Her patience somehow strengthened his assumptions rather than challenging them. "You have been unusually calm," Jason finally remarked. Angela looked toward him with the same respectful expression she had maintained since the beginning of the encounter. "Remaining calm usually gives everyone a better opportunity to understand the truth," she answered softly. Jason folded his arms. "Good decisions begin with following instructions." Angela nodded immediately. "I agree completely." There was no sarcasm in her voice. No frustration. Only quiet dignity. Nearby, a records clerk paused while carrying archive files before continuing toward the entrance. Two academy recruits quietly exchanged uncertain glances while pretending to review training notes. A television photographer standing across the plaza continued recording the growing crowd, sensing that something important was unfolding without understanding why. Public moments often gathered silent witnesses before anyone realized history was quietly changing direction. Inside headquarters, however, concern had already begun spreading from one office to another. The conference room prepared for the leadership ceremony remained filled with captains, deputy chiefs, city officials, and department representatives, yet the seat reserved for the incoming chief remained empty. Captain David Reynolds checked his watch before looking toward Deputy Chief Marcus Hill. "Has anyone reached her?" he asked quietly. Marcus slowly shook his head. "Transportation confirmed she arrived near headquarters, but she has not entered the building." The room became noticeably quieter. Every minute pushed the scheduled ceremony farther behind. Marcus immediately contacted department security while administrative staff reviewed exterior camera feeds covering every entrance to headquarters. One enlarged image repeatedly displayed a woman wearing a charcoal business suit standing calmly near the front security area while a uniformed officer remained beside her. The picture remained distant, yet something about the posture, the leather briefcase, and the remarkable composure seemed immediately familiar. Marcus leaned closer to the screen before quietly lowering the tablet. "I believe I know exactly where she is." Without another moment of hesitation, he left the conference room accompanied by several senior command officers. Back outside, Jason received a routine radio transmission requesting all available personnel remain alert because department leadership was searching for an important official whose arrival had unexpectedly stopped. He acknowledged the message without connecting it to the woman patiently standing before him. To Jason, the search involved someone entirely different. Angela briefly looked toward the headquarters entrance before softly saying, "Officer, leadership is strongest when every decision allows room for the complete truth." Jason remained silent because he believed he already understood everything necessary to complete his assignment. Only a short distance away, Deputy Chief Marcus Hill stepped through the headquarters entrance with several senior officials, and with every step they took toward the front plaza, the distance between assumption and truth quietly disappeared. Officer Jason Walker had spent enough years wearing a badge to believe that experience allowed him to recognize a situation before it fully unfolded. Every successful patrol, every routine encounter, and every quick decision had quietly reinforced that confidence until confidence gradually became certainty. Standing outside the headquarters beneath the bright morning sunlight, he watched Angela Brooks with growing suspicion simply because she refused to become emotional. Most people in similar situations immediately protested. Some demanded supervisors. Others insisted on explaining themselves before another question could even be asked. Angela did none of those things. She remained composed, her leather briefcase resting quietly beside her while officers, civilian employees, and reporters continued moving through the entrance only a few yards away. Her calm demeanor somehow convinced Jason that she was concealing something rather than simply remaining patient. "You still have not explained why you came here," he finally said. Angela looked toward him with steady brown eyes before answering. "I offered to explain when we first spoke." Jason replied almost immediately. "I will decide when explanations become necessary." Angela acknowledged the statement with a respectful nod. "Very well." There was no frustration in her voice. Only quiet discipline. Nearby, 2 academy recruits slowed their pace while pretending to organize training materials. A television photographer continued recording from the media area after noticing several officers quietly watching the encounter. A civilian employee carrying briefing folders paused near the entrance before continuing inside. Around them, ordinary activity continued, yet the atmosphere surrounding the front plaza grew noticeably quieter. Inside headquarters, concern continued spreading through the command staff. Captain David Reynolds stood beside Deputy Chief Marcus Hill reviewing another unanswered update from department administration. The conference room remained filled with city officials, command officers, and invited guests waiting for the leadership ceremony to begin. One chair remained empty. "Any confirmation?" Captain Reynolds asked quietly. Marcus checked another message before answering. "Transportation confirms she arrived near headquarters. There is still no record of her entering the building." He immediately requested another review of the exterior security cameras. Multiple angles displayed the front entrance from different perspectives until one enlarged image repeatedly showed a woman wearing a charcoal business suit standing calmly near the security area while a uniformed officer remained beside her. Marcus leaned closer to the display. The posture, the leather briefcase, and the unmistakable composure immediately felt familiar. He quietly looked toward Captain Reynolds. "That is Angela Brooks." Without another second of hesitation, both men left the conference room accompanied by several senior command officers. Back outside, Jason received another routine radio transmission requesting all available personnel remain alert because department leadership was searching for an important official whose arrival had unexpectedly stopped. He acknowledged the message with complete confidence. To him, the search involved someone entirely different from the woman patiently standing before him. Angela briefly looked toward the headquarters entrance before softly saying, "Officer, leadership is strongest when every decision allows every fact the opportunity to arrive." Jason answered without hesitation. "Public safety depends on making decisions quickly." Angela offered a gentle smile. "The strongest decisions are both careful and timely." Jason remained silent because he believed he already understood everything necessary to complete his assignment. At that very moment, Deputy Chief Marcus Hill stepped through the headquarters doors accompanied by Captain Reynolds and several senior officials, moving directly toward the front plaza with calm urgency. Officers standing nearby instinctively straightened their posture. Reporters lowered their conversations. Even the morning bustle around headquarters seemed to pause. Jason instinctively prepared to explain what he believed had been a routine security matter, completely unaware that only a few more steps separated every assumption he had made from the truth that had been patiently waiting before him since the beginning of the morning. Deputy Chief Marcus Hill crossed the headquarters plaza with calm determination, accompanied by Captain David Reynolds, several command staff members, and administrative officials whose expressions reflected growing concern rather than urgency. Around them, patrol officers instinctively stepped aside, civilian employees paused near the entrance, and television crews quietly lowered their conversations as the group moved directly toward the front security area. Officer Jason Walker immediately straightened his posture, convinced the arriving leaders were responding to the situation he believed he had handled correctly. He glanced briefly toward Angela Brooks before addressing the approaching deputy chief. "Sir," he began confidently, "this individual was detained while I verified her identity after observing circumstances that required additional review." Marcus listened carefully without interrupting a single word. When Jason finished speaking, he looked beyond him toward Angela, and the concern that had followed him throughout the morning disappeared immediately. He stepped forward with unmistakable respect. "Good morning, Chief Brooks," he said warmly. "The entire department has been waiting for you. The leadership ceremony cannot begin until you arrive." Those words settled across the headquarters plaza in complete silence. Captain Reynolds quietly released a slow breath before adding, "Chief, everyone believed something unexpected had happened. We have all been searching for you." Angela acknowledged both men with the same composed smile she had carried since stepping onto the plaza. "I appreciate everyone's patience," she replied gently. "It appears this morning has reminded all of us that patience is often the first step toward understanding." Jason felt every assumption he had made quietly collapse beneath the weight of a single sentence. The woman he had judged, detained, and publicly embarrassed before fellow officers, employees, reporters, and neighbors was not simply another visitor approaching headquarters. She was the new chief every person inside the building had gathered to welcome. Around them, whispers spread across the entrance. Academy recruits slowly lowered their training folders. Reporters exchanged astonished glances while camera operators instinctively focused their lenses on the unfolding moment. Officers standing near the front doors looked from Jason to Angela, struggling to reconcile what they had just witnessed with what they now understood. Marcus Hill turned toward Jason with complete professionalism. "Officer Walker," he said calmly, "Chief Brooks requested a simple arrival this morning because she wanted to meet this department as any ordinary citizen would. She has always believed that leadership begins with listening before being recognized." Jason slowly removed his patrol cap, his voice noticeably quieter than before. "Chief Brooks, I sincerely apologize." Angela met his eyes with steady kindness. "Thank you, officer." She paused briefly before continuing. "An apology becomes meaningful when it changes tomorrow's decisions instead of defending yesterday's." No one interrupted. Even the steady sounds of traffic passing beyond headquarters seemed quieter as those words settled over everyone present. There was no anger in her voice. No attempt to embarrass him in return. Only quiet dignity. Captain Reynolds respectfully returned Angela's leather briefcase exactly as it had been when she first arrived. She accepted it with a grateful nod before turning once more toward Jason. "Every person who approaches this department deserves confidence that they will be treated with fairness before assumptions decide who they are," she said softly. Jason met her eyes. "I understand that now." Angela smiled warmly. "Then today has already accomplished something worthwhile." Marcus quietly gestured toward the headquarters entrance where department leaders remained waiting. "Chief, everyone is ready whenever you are." Angela thanked him and calmly walked toward the front doors. Officers instinctively stepped aside with quiet respect while morning sunlight reflected across the polished stone entrance. Jason remained standing beside the security area, silently watching the woman he had underestimated enter the building she would now lead, finally realizing that true leadership had never needed to announce itself because genuine character had already spoken long before anyone recognized the title it carried. Later that afternoon, after Chief Angela Brooks had officially assumed leadership of the department, the atmosphere inside headquarters shifted from surprise to careful reflection. The leadership ceremony concluded with quiet professionalism, yet no one present had forgotten what had happened outside the front entrance only hours earlier. Captain David Reynolds immediately instructed that every available recording connected to the encounter be preserved according to department policy. Body camera footage, exterior security cameras, dashboard recordings, and media recordings captured from the public plaza were secured before routine system updates could overwrite them. Officer Jason Walker was requested to attend a formal administrative review inside the department conference room. The atmosphere remained calm, organized, and professional. No one entered expecting humiliation. Everyone entered expecting honesty. Deputy Chief Marcus Hill stood beside a large display screen while command staff, legal advisors, training supervisors, and department representatives quietly took their seats. He allowed the room to settle before speaking. Our responsibility today is not to defend assumptions. It is to understand decisions. The first recording appeared across the screen. It showed Chief Brooks approaching headquarters alone, holding the entrance door for an elderly visitor before calmly walking toward security. Another camera confirmed that she immediately stopped when instructed by Officer Walker. A third recording preserved every word spoken between them. Her voice remained respectful. Her posture remained composed. She never argued, never attempted to leave, and never refused a lawful instruction. Every recording quietly repeated the same story from a different perspective. The room remained completely silent until the final image faded. Deputy Chief Hill turned toward the officers seated around the table. "What do the facts show?" One supervisor answered quietly. Chief Brooks cooperated completely from beginning to end. Another added, "Nothing in her conduct suggested hostility, resistance, or disrespect." Jason continued looking at the frozen image where Chief Brooks stood patiently outside headquarters with remarkable composure. For the first time, he was no longer remembering the encounter through the certainty of his own assumptions. He was seeing it exactly as it had happened. Deputy Chief Hill then addressed him directly. "Officer Walker, after reviewing every recording, what stands out to you most?" Jason took a slow breath before answering. "Chief Brooks never gave me a reason to question her character. I allowed my first impression to become my final conclusion before I truly observed her actions." No one interrupted him. The honesty of the admission required no additional explanation. Later that evening, Chief Brooks invited Jason to a brief meeting inside her office before concluding the day's schedule. She welcomed him with the same calm expression she had shown from the beginning of the morning. Jason spoke first. "Chief, I want to apologize again. I understand now that every person deserves fairness before assumptions." Chief Brooks acknowledged his words with a gentle nod. "Thank you, officer." An apology becomes meaningful when it changes tomorrow's decisions instead of explaining yesterday's. She paused before continuing. "Leadership is never measured by how people behave when everyone agrees with them. Leadership is measured by how they respond after discovering they were wrong." The room remained silent as those words settled over everyone present. Chief Brooks then approved a department-wide program focusing on communication, observation, impartial judgment, and respectful interaction with every member of the public. "Improving the culture will always matter more than protecting pride," she said warmly. Before Jason left the office, she offered one final thought. "A badge gives authority. Character determines whether that authority earns trust." Jason nodded sincerely. "I will remember that every day I wear this uniform." As he quietly closed the office door behind him, he understood that the most important lesson of his career had not been delivered through discipline or public embarrassment. It had been demonstrated by a leader whose dignity had spoken long before anyone recognized the position she had come to hold. Several months quietly passed, and the difficult morning outside police headquarters gradually became something far greater than an internal report stored inside the department archives. Chief Angela Brooks refused to allow the incident to become a story about one individual. Instead, she transformed it into a lesson about leadership, professionalism, and the responsibility carried by every badge. Captain David Reynolds worked closely with Deputy Chief Marcus Hill to introduce a department-wide training program centered on communication, observation, impartial judgment, and respectful public interaction. Every newly assigned officer attended the program before beginning field duty. The first slide displayed on the presentation screen never changed. Leadership begins with the way we treat people before we know who they are. The room always remained silent for several moments before instruction began. Officer Jason Walker attended every session without complaint because he no longer viewed that morning as an isolated mistake. He understood it as a permanent reminder that confidence without reflection could quietly become its own blind spot. During one discussion, a newly graduated academy officer asked how someone could balance decisive policing with patience during uncertain situations. Jason answered without hesitation. Professional judgment becomes stronger when observation comes before assumption. Taking one extra moment to listen can prevent a much larger mistake from following. Several officers quietly wrote those words into their notebooks before the conversation continued. Across the department, Chief Brooks led with the same calm discipline she had demonstrated before anyone recognized her position. She visited patrol briefings, listened to detectives, spoke with civilian employees, and encouraged supervisors to build trust through consistency rather than authority alone. She never mentioned the incident during public speeches because she believed lasting cultural change came from improving tomorrow instead of repeatedly reliving yesterday. Whenever young supervisors asked what quality mattered most in leadership, her answer remained remarkably simple. Respect should never depend upon recognition. If people receive dignity only after learning a title, then leadership has already failed. Those words quietly spread throughout command meetings, mentoring sessions, and leadership workshops because they reflected principles larger than one difficult morning. Months later, Headquarters hosted a community partnership event welcoming neighborhood organizations, students, veterans, and local families into the building to learn about modern policing, public service, and community cooperation. Officers demonstrated equipment, answered questions, and guided visitors through the headquarters with patience and professionalism. Officer Jason Walker volunteered throughout the event, helping elderly visitors navigate the building, answering children's questions with genuine kindness, and patiently assisting a nervous young volunteer who had become separated from a school group. Across the lobby, Chief Brooks quietly noticed the interaction while greeting community leaders before another scheduled meeting. She recognized Jason immediately, yet what captured her attention most was not the uniform he wore. It was the patience in his voice, the humility in his posture, and the willingness to listen before speaking. She smiled gently before continuing through the hallway without interrupting the moment because she understood that meaningful growth rarely announced itself through dramatic speeches. It appeared quietly through ordinary decisions repeated faithfully over time. As evening sunlight reflected across the headquarters windows and officers prepared to begin another shift, the building felt unchanged from the outside. The same badge still represented responsibility. The same headquarters still represented public service. Yet something important had quietly become stronger within those walls. Trust was no longer treated as an expectation. It had become a daily responsibility strengthened one respectful conversation at a time, proving once again that genuine leadership is never measured by the authority someone possesses but by the character they consistently demonstrate when no recognition is required. Another year quietly unfolded, and the lesson that had begun outside headquarters gradually became woven into the culture of the entire department. Every morning, patrol officers reported for duty beneath the same flag that flew above the entrance, detectives reviewed overnight reports, civilian employees welcomed visitors, and academy graduates began careers filled with the same responsibility carried by generations before them. From the outside, the building appeared unchanged. Inside, however, something important had quietly evolved. Chief Angela Brooks believed that leadership was measured not by authority alone but by the standards people chose to uphold when no one was watching. During every leadership workshop, she reminded supervisors that trust was earned long before difficult decisions ever arrived. People remember how they were treated long after they forget every other detail, she often said. If we protect dignity first, we strengthen every decision that follows. Those words gradually became part of everyday conversations throughout the department. Officer Jason Walker no longer viewed them as simple leadership philosophy. They had become part of the way he approached every interaction. Every citizen received a respectful greeting before questions began. Every conversation allowed room for explanation before conclusions formed. Fellow officers quietly noticed that situations which once might have escalated often ended peacefully because people felt heard rather than judged. During one field training exercise, a newly assigned patrol officer asked Jason why he always spent an extra moment listening before responding. Jason looked toward the front entrance of headquarters before answering. "The badge gives us responsibility, not permission to stop listening. If I forget that, I forget why the public trusted us in the first place." The young officer quietly nodded, carrying those words into future assignments. Across headquarters, Chief Brooks continued leading with the same calm discipline that had defined her from the very first morning she arrived. She attended roll calls, visited investigative units, met with community leaders, and encouraged every division to measure success not only by solved cases but also by the confidence citizens placed in the department. She never returned publicly to the incident outside headquarters because she believed organizations became stronger by improving their future rather than reliving their past. During a leadership conference attended by command staff, university students, and future public servants, one participant asked what quality mattered most in a leader. Chief Brooks paused thoughtfully before answering. "Authority may open a door, but character determines whether people choose to follow you through it." The room remained completely silent as every listener carefully reflected on those words. Months later, headquarters hosted another community outreach day welcoming families, teachers, veterans, and neighborhood organizations to meet officers and learn about public service. Officer Jason Walker volunteered throughout the event, patiently helping elderly visitors navigate the building, answering children's questions about safety with genuine kindness, and personally escorting a nervous first-time visitor to the correct meeting room instead of simply pointing down the hallway. From across the lobby, Chief Brooks quietly observed the interaction while greeting community leaders before another scheduled meeting. She recognized Jason immediately, yet what stood out most was not his uniform. It was the patience in his voice, the humility in his actions, and the quiet confidence that no longer depended upon assumptions. She smiled gently before continuing through the hallway because nothing more needed to be said. The lesson had already become visible through ordinary choices repeated faithfully every day. As evening sunlight reflected across the headquarters windows and another shift prepared to begin, the building stood as it always had. Yet within those walls, something more enduring than policy had taken root. Trust had become a daily practice, strengthened one respectful conversation at a time, proving that genuine leadership is never remembered because it demanded respect, but because it first chose to give it. As another season quietly settled over the city, the headquarters continued welcoming officers before sunrise with the same steady rhythm that had defined public service for generations. Patrol vehicles arrived one after another, briefing rooms gradually filled with conversation, and community members entered the lobby seeking assistance with the quiet confidence that they would be treated fairly. Most people walking through those doors never realized that one difficult morning had quietly transformed the standards by which many inside measured their own professionalism. Chief Angela Brooks never allowed the department to celebrate the incident that had introduced her leadership. Instead, she asked every division commander to focus on what could be learned rather than who could be blamed. Weekly leadership meetings began with short discussions about communication, observation, and the responsibility carried by every public servant before authority was ever exercised. The emphasis slowly changed the culture of the department. Officers began sharing examples of situations where patience prevented misunderstanding, supervisors encouraged thoughtful conversations after difficult calls, and academy instructors incorporated those lessons into scenario-based training. Officer Jason Walker no longer viewed those conversations as reminders of personal embarrassment. They had become part of the professional standard he expected from himself every single day. He greeted citizens before asking questions, carefully listened before drawing conclusions, and encouraged younger officers to observe behavior rather than rely upon assumptions. During one neighborhood meeting, A new patrol officer quietly asked Jason why he seemed willing to spend extra time speaking with residents even when other assignments were waiting. Jason looked across the room where families, business owners, teachers, and senior citizens had gathered before answering. Communities remember respect longer than they remember any individual incident. If we earn trust first, every other responsibility becomes easier to carry. The room remained quiet as those words settled over everyone present. Across the department, Chief Brooks continued leading with remarkable consistency. She attended academy graduations, met with neighborhood organizations, visited patrol briefings, and listened carefully to officers at every level of the organization. She believed that listening demonstrated strength rather than weakness, and that belief gradually became visible throughout headquarters. During a regional leadership conference attended by law enforcement executives, university students, and civic leaders, one participant asked what qualities separated a respected leader from an ordinary supervisor. Chief Brooks smiled gently before answering. People may remember your position for a moment, but they will remember your character for a lifetime. Leadership begins when people feel respected before they are evaluated. The audience remained completely silent before writing down her words. Several months later, headquarters organized another community partnership event where officers volunteered alongside neighborhood residents, teachers, firefighters, and local organizations to support youth programs and family services. Officer Jason Walker spent the afternoon helping elderly visitors navigate the building, answering children's questions with patience, and guiding first-time visitors who seemed uncertain about where to go. From across the lobby, Chief Brooks quietly noticed those ordinary moments while greeting community leaders before another scheduled meeting. She recognized the quiet confidence that had replaced certainty with humility, and she understood that meaningful change rarely arrived through dramatic speeches. It appeared through ordinary decisions repeated faithfully over time. As evening sunlight reflected across the headquarters windows and another shift prepared to serve the city, the building appeared exactly as it always had. Yet something within those walls had quietly become stronger. Policies remained important. Procedures remained essential. But the greatest change came from people who chose understanding before assumption, fairness before certainty, and respect before recognition, proving once again that authentic leadership grows strongest when character quietly leads the way long before authority ever needs to speak. Another year quietly passed, and the headquarters continued opening its doors before sunrise just as it always had. Patrol officers arrived for roll call, detectives reviewed overnight reports, civilian employees welcomed visitors, and community members entered the building believing that the people inside would protect them with fairness, professionalism, and respect. Most of them never realized that one difficult morning outside the entrance had permanently changed the way many officers understood the responsibility carried by a badge. Officer Jason Walker continued serving the city, but those who worked beside him recognized that his greatest change could never be measured by promotions, commendations, or statistics. It could only be seen in the way he greeted every citizen before asking questions, listened before drawing conclusions, and patiently allowed every person the opportunity to speak before deciding what the situation truly required. Younger officers frequently asked why he devoted extra time to conversations that appeared ordinary. Jason would simply smile before answering, "People remember how we make them feel long after they forget why we first met. If we protect dignity first, we strengthen everything else that follows." Those words quietly became part of the culture shared throughout the department. Chief Angela Brooks continued leading with the same calm discipline that had defined her from the moment she first approached headquarters without announcing who she was. She visited every division, listened carefully during briefings, encouraged honest conversations after difficult calls, and reminded supervisors that leadership was never proven by authority alone. It was proven by consistency, humility, and the willingness to treat every person with equal respect. During a leadership conference attended by officers, students, civic leaders, and future public servants, one participant asked what separated an unforgettable leader from an ordinary one. Chief Brooks paused thoughtfully before replying, "People may remember the position you held, but they will never forget how you treated them when you had the opportunity to choose between pride and respect. The audience remained completely silent because every listener understood that those words belonged not only inside police departments, but in every workplace, every neighborhood, and every community. Months later, headquarters once again welcomed families, teachers, veterans, and neighborhood organizations during a community partnership event. Officer Jason Walker spent the afternoon helping elderly visitors find meeting rooms, answering children's questions about public service with patience, and guiding first-time visitors through the building with genuine kindness. Across the lobby, Chief Brooks quietly noticed those ordinary moments while greeting community leaders before another meeting. She recognized the same officer immediately, yet what stood out most was no longer the uniform he wore. It was the character he demonstrated through countless small decisions that no headline would ever report. She smiled gently before continuing down the hallway because there was nothing left to teach. The lesson had already become part of another person's life. As evening sunlight reflected across the headquarters windows and another shift prepared to protect the city, the building appeared unchanged from the outside. The same badge still represented responsibility. The same office still represented leadership. Yet something far more important had quietly grown stronger within those walls. Authority could assign responsibility. Rank could define a position. But only character could inspire trust. Because in the end, real leadership never needed to announce itself. It quietly revealed its greatest strength whenever someone chose humility before certainty, understanding before assumption, and respect before recognition, leaving behind a legacy that continued guiding others long after every title, every ceremony, and every ordinary day had quietly become history.